Hello and welcome to episode 17 of the Obstacle Race Magazine podcast. This week we have got a feature-length episode for you. We have got KARL ALLSOP from Spartan Race with us, or Spartan, sorry, as it should be called now, Spartan in the UK. He is the Director of Race Operations in the UK. Is that still the correct title for you, Carl?
Yeah, I believe so. The
Yeah.
Director of Production, Race Operations, Race Director. I think we flush it under many titles.
So I met Carl through... Oh, and we've got Kevin here as well. Sorry, Kev.
Almost forgot about you.
Sorry, Kevin. Every week.
Well,
So I met Carl quite a long time ago now, actually, through Spartan, as it was, Spartan Race in the UK. He actually gave me some advice on shoes, on what shoes to wear for Spartan, because I didn't have a clue way back then. So it would have been the first year that they ever put on a trifecta when I was starting to take it a little bit more seriously, when you could buy a season pass for like peanuts. and I think there weren't really many shoes about then. No one knew about Innovates and what have you. But anyway, so he gave me some advice and I went for the Adidas TR5s, I think they were back then. But yeah, so Carl, fan of extreme endurance races. You've taken part in Nicaragua before, haven't you, Carl?
Yeah, that's...
World's Toughest Mudder as well?
No, I haven't
No?
got to World's Toughest yet. It was the Death Race. The Death Race went on to Fuego y Agua. Then multiple Go Ruck challenges, and then a couple of Hurricane Heats, and then did some work with Spartan Endurance.
Yeah. So so from there, how did that then jump into where you are now and working for Spartan? How did that evolve into?
It was the Death Race that gave that one.
Yeah.
I'd gone over for even getting to the Death Race was a pretty funny story. I'd done a sprint. I did the sprint in Basimborn. I want to say 2012. Could be 2012. I might have the years wrong. I come out of it, absolutely loved it. Loved everything about Spartan, loved everything about the course, everything that you didn't know what was happening. I remember getting to certain points on course and sort of asking staff or volunteers, like, hey, what's next? And just being told, hey, you'll find out when you get there. And you looped back towards the festival so many times, you never really knew what was going to happen. Finished the race and loved it. It was probably the first real challenge I'd done for over a year, sort of first real physical challenge I'd done for over a year. And I got in touch with Spartans. I went on the website. I saw that there was a super and a beast, so I wanted to pick up and do more of them. Was told there are no other sprints or beasts, supers or beasts in the UK. It's just going to be sprints for now. So I'd planned to fly over to the US to do the beast. I think it was the beast around Killington. And then as I'm looking through the website, I saw this youmaydie.com. And I thought, okay, well, that's always going to get you to want to click on it. So I did and found out the Death Race. Watched a couple of videos and thought it just looks the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. But I worked out that I was going to spend the same amount of money to do a beast as I would the Death Race.
Yeah.
So hour for hour, the Death Race was just better value. So I did that instead. And I met some really good friends over there. I didn't finish it. I got to... I want to say it was around 30 hours, maybe 30 hours in. Did some ridiculous tasks. Felt the wrath of Joe multiple times, and realised very early on that it was a race against them, not against the other people you're competing with, and it was just a survival to the end.
What were some of the sort of challenges you had to do on that?
So right at the start, we had to chop. It was just over a ton of wood individually. We had to tread water for around 20 minutes, holding rocks. We had to. These were just hey, we're just going to make sure you're ready for this. And I always remember Joe just screwing with my head pretty early on. You were told to sew your racer number onto your shirt. I've still got the shirt with me in a box somewhere in the house. And I wanted to, it was a race, it was a challenge, so I was so quick and couldn't understand why everyone else was taking their time to do it, so I put number 42, sewed it onto my black shirt real quick, went up to Joe, I was like, hey, I feel so proud that I've done this, and he sort of pointed at this wood and said, hey, you now need to carry that one log at a time, all of that pile, over to the side of the road and chop it. Okay, no problem. So I start doing it, and then after around 30, 45 minutes, I look around and go, why is everyone else using wheelbarrows? I'm going to use a wheelbarrow. And the moment my hands went on it, Joe just appeared, just berated me in front of everyone there. Like, he told me to carry it one at a time. Why was I cheating? I'm like, wait, hold on a minute. Everyone else is doing this. I didn't tell them they couldn't. You've got to do it that way. And now you've got to take it further away from everyone else. Like, whoa, this is ridiculous. But loved every minute of it. We did that, and then we had to hike to the top of Joe's Mountain with our packs to get weighed in. It was then that I sort of realised that I had a 70-pound pack on. And then we came down from the mountain, did a few more of those tasks, and then officially we were told we're going to start the race. But we're going to start it on the other side of the mountain. So we're split into groups of 10. We're given the big 3-person training canoes, the 3-seat training canoes, and that had to be locked out overhead while we run a marathon over the mountains with our packs. It's just it just went on. It was just endless, and he'd stop us to do burpees, and you'd just be stopped like, hey, we're going to do 500 burpees now. I remember there was one point, it was dark at night, the sun had just set, so he told us, everyone's turning your head torches off, and we're all sort of looking around at each other, we're all doing these burpees, and at that point we were just over 1,000 burpees, so the burpee had kind of just progressed to a flop on the ground, stand back up and just try and just leave the ground in any way you can, which generally became just jump until you flop back down on the floor. But all the lights went out, everyone's head torch went out, and Joe was just stood in the middle. And the moment his back turned to you, just groups of people just put your hands on each other's shoulders. Like, no, just keep counting. Just keep counting. We're not going to do it. And I swear to God, that guy has eyes in the back of his head, because the moment you did it, he knew. He knew. He'd turn around, he'd look at you straight away, and that's another 100 on there. And you regretted it pretty quickly. I pulled out as we got towards the opposite end. I'd got cramps so badly that every single step I took and everything I was trying to do to stop it just wasn't working. About 10 minutes after I quit, I realised I could have just continued and done so much more. Yeah. But I made some friends in the death race, and I probably learnt more from watching those guys continue, those friends continue in the death race, than I probably would have done by finishing. I got to see the resilience of people. I got to see what people can actually do, and I got to take inspiration from that. And then one of those friends, a guy called Johnny Waite, some people will be aware of him. He was pretty known back in the day in Spartan. He became our first quality manager for Spartan, and this is going back to 2014, when we decided we want to start making sure that every race is the same, or as close as we can get it. So Johnny rang me. He said, I'm going to be over in the UK for a year. Do you want? It'd be great to hang out. So for the first part of 2014, I volunteered. I'd go to races. I'd volunteer throughout the race, and I'd get to hang out with this guy that I didn't really get to see any of the time for a couple of beers at the end. We had some pretty funny stories. We made some great memories along the way. Towards the back end of that, I was asked if I wanted to come back and help out a couple of other races on build. And it was good fun. So I ended 2014 as volunteering for the majority, volunteering and coming in and helping out on some of the build days. And then as we went into 2015, I was part of the build crew. And I'd worked out that I could take all of my annual leave and cover the build cycles. And even better, I'd get paid my annual leave, and I'd get paid to be at Spartan building obstacles, which...
So what were you doing at that time? What was your full-time job at that time?
I was an operations manager for an outsourcing company. It was about as boring as it
sounds boring. Let's forget that then. Let's go on to the next bit.
Yeah, it paid the bills. It did pretty well, but it was definitely nothing exciting. But,
I think I first met you, I think it must have been about 2014 at a running show. It might have been at Weatherby Racecourse, somewhere like that. And you were putting your own event on at the time.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit more about that.
So as I came out of the death race and came back over to the UK, there was no other event like it, and I wanted to just try and sort of give someone even just a fraction of the experience that I'd had from the death race. So I got in touch with Joe and a couple of the guys at Spartan and had a chat. I said, look, it'll be that death race type of event, but one, I don't want to rip it off and copy it, and two, I don't want to proceed and do it if you're not happy for me to. Joe came back and essentially, I guess, gave me his blessing to go ahead and do it. So I started a company that put on an event called On Trial, and it was a very similar principle. It was around 48 hours. There'd be a range of tasks going through there, and you wouldn't know what it would be until until you got to the end, and until you got to face that task. We had really low numbers. It was sort of 10 to 15, and I'd say it was a labour of love, if anything else. But I absolutely loved every second of it. I tried to break into some trail running around the same time, and then it just became something that just didn't work out for multiple reasons. I think that's where I was at I think it was a running show or something similar that I met you, Kev.
I think at that time, I don't think the market were quite ready for it yet. Not enough of the, because we've seen an evolution now of OCR, and they've moved on to it. People have sort of really got the fill. The ones who've been around a long time have got the fill of certain OCRs, and they've been around world, and they've done this, that, and the other. So now they're actually looking for those next steps. Whereas back then, doing a sprint were sort of enough for most of them. There weren't many crazy because I've actually still got the pictures from that first event as well. from following like people who were like world champion Jonathan Albon were there at that first event, chopping wood and making rafts and whatever else that they were doing. So it was strange. It was a strange thing through night. I don't think I've ever, like, for me, and I was only sort of following and documenting it, I've never really experienced anything like it in terms of how I got to go home halfway through, have a sleep, and then come back and they were still going. And I've never seen anyone fall asleep walking before, but Ben Kirkup, he was falling asleep walking, and I've never known it. So these are all fit guys, and I think it were all guys, and were there a girl as well? I can't remember who signed up for that first one.
There was. Her name was Lindsay. She did the first one.
Of course. Yeah. And they were seeing things. I can remember, in fact, Lindsay, I can remember her seeing a Furby floating on a tray on the water and telling everyone all about it, that they were but in terms of how far you'd push them, because I can remember you'd pop out of bushes without any lights on and all of a sudden just appear in front of us on a trail. And I've never known any human beings take so long to walk a mile in all my life. They had to stop at literally every single thing they could sit on. They wanted to sit on it because you'd pushed them so far by that stage.
You're pretty slow over a mile as well, though, Carl. So
honestly, they made me look fast because of how they had to sit at everything. But they were immediately sit down and fall asleep. It was absolutely crazy how far you'd pushed them. But then to like finish off by doing random things, but they didn't know when the end point was. So it's always that unknown, because people don't know now what the death race was. It's only the people who've been around a long time who even know what the death race was back then anyway, in terms of like climbing up the side of a mountain under barbed wire for whatever distance and all that sort of stuff. They don't know what Joe used to put. It were basically Joe's way of getting rid of every sadistic thought that he'd had for probably a full year preceding the event.
In my head, it's like Fight Club. So everyone who's done a death race sort of give each other the sort of the nod. There's that respect there, but you don't talk about it.
Yeah, if you've been there, you know.
They looked like they'd been in Fight Club, a lot of them as well. By the time they finished, they looked so beat up and bruised and battered.
I've seen some videos on YouTube where they're sort of eating raw onions and counting out bags of pennies and things, and it's just...
There were a lot of... Yeah, go on, sorry.
I said just putting yourself through the rigours, and you see this type of event now, like you said, it's evolved a lot and people want to do this type of challenge, but they're just totally not prepared. They think I started off with a 5k OCR, I moved up to a 10k, I've done the beast, that's it now, I'm now ready to take on this massive endurance, and they're not.
No, I don't, to be honest, I don't think there's any real way to get ready for it. It's you essentially put yourself out there saying, hey, I'm willing for more. I'm willing to put myself into something that I don't know what's going to happen. And I've had multiple people ask me, sort of, how do you get ready for that? And there is no real way to get ready for it. I had a group of people, I think it was November 2014, it was the middle of winter, and I told them they had to make a cup of tea, but the sugar was half a mile away and they could only use chopsticks to bring it there, and I took 2. And they did it. And some of the tasks that we've put in, we've openly said to them at the end, like, we just put that in just to see what your reaction would be. We never really expected you to do it, but people do have the ability to just knuckle down and do what's needed.
Yeah.
And you really see that. It's one of the things that I love about those events. There's generally a resistance to a lot of things. People will show some resistance to something that they're not sure about or can't find a solution to. And you see it a lot. You'll see people scratch their heads and try and work out what's the easier way of doing this. And you used to see it all the time. Like as it's what used to make an obstacle like bucket carry one of my favorite obstacles. It sucks. It absolutely sucks as an obstacle. The only real way to do
all the Spartan carries suck.
I love a carry, and it's because it brings you back to that same aspect that I used to love seeing during these ridiculous 2-3 day endurance events. There is no way to make it easy. There's you either do it or you don't, and the only real way to do it is just to accept that this is probably going to get uncomfortable for a while. But if you get through that, it'll be worth it in the end. And that's what I learned at the Death Race. That was my big takeaway at the Death Race, and that carried with me through a lot. And it definitely carried with me as one of the big focal points into on trial, and has taken through into Spartan and multiple other places. And it's given a hell of a lot of stories, a huge amount of stories that you'd have to do multiple feature lengths to start falling down that rabbit hole. Yeah.
People certainly seem to come away with. Basically, they learn an awful lot about themselves after doing that sort of event. They come out and whether it be like how far their mental fortitude can actually take them, or how to, even in some circumstances, how to work smarter rather than harder as well, because that's what some of it boiled down to, where Joe would put these little puzzles together or whatever. It would be a case of working out how to get round what he's just asked you to do and work through it in the smartest way. So I used to love watching the coverage of the death races. I'm like just gutted it's not got the same. There's not the same. It's just there's not the same thing there anymore that there once was.
Yeah, I mean, I think that naturally evolves. The same with a lot of races. It's really easy, I guess, to say, hey, things have got softer. And I don't think it's so much that it gets softer, but you have to cater for so many different people. Yeah. If you think back to the death race, almost 10 years ago, so 7 to 8, 10 years ago, you had a really small handful of people doing it. I think there was 150, 160 when I went there to do it, and of those 150 odd that signed up, less than 100 actually showed up. You can give a completely different experience to 100 people than you can 500, 600. You know you're going to lose a fair amount of those pretty early on, so you can go in pretty hard. You can just give a totally different experience. And whilst that event like the death race is, you want to push people, you also don't want people to arrive, have put all that time and an effort in to quit within a few seconds and they don't experience or get anything out of it. Yeah. So there definitely has some impact there of how you have to evolve the event itself. To cater for what people as a whole want to experience. And it's a difficult balance. It's a real difficult balance to get.
And will it ever come back? Think there'll be another Spartan Death Race at some point? Is that a laugh as in what you know? Or?
It's tough because...
I don't think you've got to talk about this anymore, Carl. I think we're...
But Joe used to have a partner in crime back then who used to work alongside him to put it together, and I don't know if it'd ever have the same.
I don't know. Look at this grin. This could be the partner in crime.
Yeah, it's not me. I absolutely love the endurance world, but there's other people better placed for the death race and various things like that. I mean, the death race is on this year. It is there. I was going to try and get myself out to it, but it clashes during a race, so we'll be at Marston Lodge instead. And some of the guys that are taking over are some of the guys that I went through the death race with. So I'm very intrigued to see what they do. They've got a very good caliber of experience with them. Will it ever be? I don't think any death race was ever the death race it was before. What part of the whole purpose of that event is that it's entirely different every single year. I know the race that I trained for, from all the videos that I saw, was nowhere near the race that I got when I got out there. So if you sign up for it, you'll learn. If anyone goes and has a go at the death race, there is no fail, I don't think. I spent a couple of years battling with, I quit, and it took me a couple of years to get my head around that you never really quit the death race. It never really leaves you. It's always there, but it's what you took away from it. And there are definite lessons that I learned during that event that I took away that have stayed with me. The death race has got a special place in my heart. It always will have.
Including never putting a ruck down whenever
ever. You never touches the ground, right? That
or using a wheelbarrow.
Never touch the ground. It's funny. There was a death race once where you were given the option of a wheelbarrow, so you had to take rocks to the top of a mountain. I think it was rocks or logs to the top of a mountain, and you could either carry them one by one or use a wheelbarrow. A fair few people chose the wheelbarrow, but there was no wheel. So they had to carry now the wheelbarrow and the rocks to the top of the mountain.
So once again, working harder
100%.
instead of smarter.
Yeah.
So on trial came, and then that sort of came to a conclusion. And
we had one more year that we had planned, but around the same time that I was working as this boring operations manager, and I'd planned to join Spartan as the build crew. I was going to just fit it in around the other job. I was actually made redundant. I was offered a year's role with the company to do wherever, just sort of figure out where to put me. And I'd always taken the safe option. For years, I'd always taken the safe option to do whatever option came ahead of me. And all of a sudden, I worked out and realised, I could get by if I changed what I've been doing and I didn't take the safe option this once. I can get by. I can get to Christmas. I know at Christmas there'll be, if I need to find another job, I'll be able to. I'll figure something out. So I thought, no, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to go for the riskier option. I love Spartan. The downside of that meant that after I joined the build crew, our first event was Allianz Park, and I think I spent the entire build cycle there with just a grin on my face. Like I'm walking around building obstacles, and I'm being paid to do this. This is just the greatest thing that I could ever imagine. Less than a year ago, I was volunteering at obstacles, looking at these people go around run a race, thinking, oh, how awesome is their job? And I was now experiencing it, and it was tough. It was hard. It sucked, but you had to fix things on the fly. You had to problem solve there and then. There was nowhere to hide. You had to be able to do a job. And then there was a change of the race director at the time, and I remember standing in, it was at Wales at Glanasky State, and we're going back there, and I could still remember the exact spot that it happened. I was asked to go and have a chat with one of the Americans, and it all seemed very vague. Just this car pulled up, like, hey, Colleen wants to speak to you.
So the window came down.
Pretty much, yeah. It sounds
Sexy
about
American lady with the shades on sort of turned to you.
No, it could sound about as shady as you probably are imagining right now. A car just pulled along, a window came down and said, hey, Colleen wants to have a chat. Like, okay, I don't know who this person is. I was walked into a room, and Colleen came walking in, sat down. It's like, hey, so we hear you've got an operational background. Yeah, I guess. Okay, do you want to do another operational job in Spartan? Like, sure. In my head, it just sounded like this is a job that will probably go a bit longer than the season, or at least pay me a little bit more to the end of the season. So, sure. Like, I'm not a communist. I'm not against money. So, I'd love to earn a little bit more. Cool. Can I crack on and do my job now? Didn't ask any other questions, and I probably should have done at that point, but I didn't. I was like, yeah, cool. I'm just going to take this option while I've got it. In my head, I was thinking, I don't know what you're going to ask me to do, but I'm pretty sure I could try and either figure it out or fail spectacularly. And then we went on. I found out 4 or 5 days later, as we loaded our last trailer and went back and sat in one of the offices. Like, so what job do you want me to do? And I had this person sort of look at me, sort of tilt their head a little bit, like, are you being serious? Like, you're race director. It sort of hit me then. It was only a few days earlier I'd been sat thinking, nah, I don't want to be a race director. There's a lot of stress in that. There's a lot of work in that. That's not for me. I don't really want to do that. And then all of a sudden I just walked myself into it and sort of agreed to do the job without.
Agreed to it at a car window.
Yeah.
Just happy at building the obstacles.
100%.
No hassle.
No, it definitely goes to show. Sometimes you should ask a few questions. Like I'm a big believer that almost anyone can do anything and sometimes you just have to I'll have a go at it. We'll do it. You can always figure stuff out and learn on the job, but you
must have got a bit of a warm feeling though when you found out. Yeah, I'm the RD of Spartan in the UK. I'm the sort of the top dog. Really.
I was scared. So excuse the expression, but I was scared.
So is it like, can I do this sort of?
Yeah,
thinking.
These people had sat and go, we heard you put some events on. Yeah, in my head thinking like 20 people. And now all of a sudden you want me to put on an OCR for like 2,000-3,000. I don't know how the hell I'm going to do this. And I almost quit after the first one. The first race happened and everything that could go wrong went wrong. It was
Where was that?
Was Manchester. It was very much a trial by fire. I remember getting our headline sponsor, Reebok at the time, stuck. They used to bring this huge truck in. And I'd got 5 people talking to me at once, and this guy came along, the delivery driver for this truck. Like, wait, can I drive along this way? And I sort of looked, didn't really pay any attention to what he was saying. In the back of my head, I sort of knew my head was going, no, he can't drive that way. Like, yeah, you'll be fine. Don't worry about it. I'd sent him straight over a field. He just got stuck in the mud, and we ended up not having our title sponsor there because they just couldn't get in. There were sections of the course that either weren't marked completely. I hadn't planned the build properly, so that we were still building the obstacles on the finish line as we sent racers off at the start line.
Oh gosh.
It was. I don't think I've ever been as stressed. I remember walking into a container in our base camp, and I remember sitting down in that at the end of race day, having a bit of a tear to myself, thinking, "Nah, this is not for me. I can't do it." I had a chat with a couple of the team after. They asked me to put together a list of what had gone wrong, what I had done, what I knew I hadn't done, and then just as a third, I added on a list of things that I had no idea I had to do. I remember one of the lists of what I had done was relatively short. There was probably couple of dozen things on there. The things that I knew I hadn't done was about the same. There were things that I knew I just hadn't quite got my head round, or at the time hadn't quite, I guess, plucked up the courage to just sort of ask for the guidance or the help on that. And then there was just this page after page of things that I didn't even know I had to do. I remember people like, hey, when do the toilets get here? And I don't know, when do the toilets get here? You tell me. Like, well,
We've all had those nightmares.
Yeah, Carl, you're race director. And I'm done. I don't want this. And I was asked to keep on for another race, just at least give it one more race, give it another go. And that was Scotland, the Sprint and Super in Edinburgh, 2015. And even to this day, it's probably one of my favourite events. There was a lot went wrong, but it all happened behind the scenes during the build. There was a lot that went wrong on race day, but no one knew. We were able to control it. We were able to manage it. I'd worked out how to ask for help. I'd worked out how to actually turn around to people with experience and go, hey, can you give me a hand on this? And their immediate reaction was, yeah, cool, well, let's get it done, not a problem. And then we sort of dug into it after, whereas I got stuck into my head so many times that, if I ask for help, they're going to realise that I don't really know what I'm doing here. Because that's how it felt for so long. Like I felt for years, for at least the first 2 years, it kind of felt like I was making up as I go along. And
well, you get given a title. It doesn't mean that you know how to do everything. I mean, I sell pies for a living, and suddenly I was the RD for Mud 7 and putting events on for thousands of people, not quite knowing. You just wing it the first year and then learn from your mistakes. Then when you have a really bad year, you think, well, it can't get worse than that. I've come through this one. I think our worst one was, a second or third one where 2 of the 7 zones pulled out in the week of the event. And it's like, what do you do now? But we got through it and we think, well, can't get worse than that. We're not going to have 3 pull out, are we? No.
Yeah. But do you find it gives you...
gets easier every year.
Do you find it gives you a really skewed perspective on normal life when you sort of go through those things, and then you end up, something happens in normal life, you're sitting like, what's your problem? This is fine.
Yeah.
This is not an issue at all. We can deal with this.
Well, we had the
Everything
toilet one
else
as well.
seemed slower paced. Oh yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We had the toilets, just didn't turn up on the Friday.
Oh,
Like we phoned up the office at 5 o'clock. Everyone's gone home. Even went onto LinkedIn, found the director of the company, found his mobile number, trying to contact anybody, and nobody got back to us at all. Then they rocked up first thing the next morning. The guy who had meant to deliver them had nicked the vehicle and all the toilets, and he'd gone off to France. And that's where our toilets are made over there.
That's probably a pretty unique one. I don't think that's going to happen to
No,
me. It's probably never going to happen to you again.
That's not going to happen again. Last year we had an ambulance stuck on the field. Like you said, somebody sent them over the field in error, stuck in the middle of a. So we've had it all as well. But some things can be helped, some can't be helped. And I think from the Manchester one, you'd have learned a lot from that, just being chucked in the deep end really, and realising actually it's not just designing a course and sticking the obstacles on it. There's a lot more that goes on in the background that you've got to organise.
Absolutely, 100%. And it did give me a newfound respect for. I'd never really looked at what does a race director do. I'd been to Spartan, I'd been to other races, and I just parked up, walked to the start line, got my registration packet, had a race, found a few gripes out on course that I maybe wasn't happy with, sort of moaned a little bit about them, got in my car and got home without a secondary thought to it whatsoever. And now I'm looking at it thinking, I used to go through social media. I still do occasionally, but there was a point I stopped reading it. People I feel when people really have a strong feeling about something they're not happy with, they'll get in touch and make you aware of that. But people also have a tendency to complain sometimes for the sake of complaining. And I started to look at it from a different aspect. I definitely started to go through and see there were things people were saying on there that hadn't even crossed my mind. There were things people were picking up on a course that I probably would have done or have done in the past on a race when I was a racer. But I was looking at it from a totally different perspective, and sometimes you don't pick up on things. So that racer feedback's definitely important, but you look at it from a different perspective. It's unless you've kind of been in that role of a race director or similar, whatever title you want to put on it, you've been in the background of an event. You never really quite see just how much, and it is very much like that swan analogy of you can stand on a race and you can stand at an event, look at hey, everything's going well, and all the staff are looking. I've people say it all the time. Hey, you look pretty chilled out today. Thinking, yep, cool, because you can't see the storm in my head right now.
Kev usually does that. He usually stands at start line looking pretty, don't he, Kev?
Yeah.
And then in your head, there's 12 different things all happening at once, and you're trying to play out all the scenarios of what.
Yeah,
what
I just want to press the fast forward button and just get to the end of the day.
Yeah. I've had that feeling. Even now, I still get the feeling on a race day morning, and I always have to take a few minutes before we open festival and open registration. I'll still stand there for like 5 or 10 minutes, and I'm still going through in my head. We check everything every single day, twice a day. We've got a team that goes through everything, so I know what can and can't go wrong, but I'll still go through my head, and I'll still sit and think, did we build Herc? Is spear throw out? Did we build this obstacle? And we've done this every single day. We go through a whiteboard and we check off every single obstacle, and I'll still stand there and think, no, this build seems to have gone all right. What have we forgot? What obstacle have we forgot to put in? Hey, did we sort out car parking? But yeah,
I have the dreams. So weeks before the event, I'll have the dreams where it's event day, nothing's built, there's no t-shirts, and people are starting to turn up, and I have that every year without fail, and they'll probably start in another month or two.
Stood on start line naked, setting everyone off.
I don't think it ever goes away. I don't think it ever goes away. I've had the fear of standing on the start line and no one's there. I'll go down and we'll open registration. I remember there was a race. I want to say it was last year, but I couldn't tell you which venue it was. We opened registration and there was no one there. And then around 10 minutes later, it just turned out it was cold, so they were all still sat in the cars because you could see registration from the cars. I'm just looking at this is it, this is the day.
Thinking you told them wrong postcode or something.
Have I spent all this money to put a race on in the wrong site on the wrong weekend?
Yeah. Wrong location weekend.
Yeah. So your worst event was your event 1, and then your best event was event 2.
I'd say. Everyone's always going to have a difference on their best. It's the one that stuck in my head so much, and one of my favourite was Scotland. Was that year. for me, as part of a learning curve of what I took from one race to another, what I learned from that was also the first course that I'd actually been able to design. So the Manchester, was given to me. Of that's the race. Here you go, crack on. You've just got to produce that. Scotland, I was given a venue of, hey, we haven't really planned anything for this, so do what you want to do. And I just went out running across that venue and sort of, where would I want to run? What would suck from my perspective? What would I want to do? Where would I want to carry? You know, how tough would I want to make this carry? And that's kind of how I designed. That's probably kind of how I design courses now, to be honest. Still, if we're going to do a carry, we could do a carry on this nice flat, but it'd be way more fun to carry to the top of that mountain and back.
And the Scottish locations are perfect for that as well. Like in terms of Scotland is tough in terms of getting numbers there, and it always has been for anyone who puts an event on there. It's a tough place to get the numbers that you need to make it really worthwhile doing. But in terms of being able to put on one of the better courses or the tougher courses, Scotland is one of those places where there's just some absolutely cracking terrain to be able to work with in the first place. Not to say that anywhere else in the country hasn't got that. It's just that Scotland is obviously, there's certain places there's Lake District, there's Peak District, there's Wales, and then there's Scotland, because you've got mountainous areas and
and there's Pippinford Park as well. Is that the Scotland of the south?
It probably is, but you're right. Every venue has its own characteristics. But it's no venue's as wet as Pippinford. I've walked that course multiple times, and no, you're not going to have dry feet from about the moment you step foot on course. Just nowhere's dry. But you're right. You get up to Scotland, and just the terrain up there is so different. We went from Edinburgh to Perth, but you still had just such an elevation gain going from the start all the way up to the top of that hill that just gave you this fantastic look out over the city. You know, we've moved back towards Edinburgh, and on paper, when you first look at it, the course doesn't look that hilly, doesn't look that mountainous. But actually, when you go through the elevation that you're going to cover across the whole course, we've just taken that same elevation, if not more, and it's just relentlessly over the entire course. You just get a different parts of the country just give themselves a different aspect. And Scotland always had the weather always played into it, and it's without trying to be too stereotypical, Scottish weather just sucks.
Yeah,
it's just brutal.
Well, they've got them massive fans on, haven't they, all the time? So you pass them fans on way up, and they never turn them off. So obviously, it's going to be cold and wet and horrible.
We go up there, you get a cold day, it's raining, and you turn around. Half my build team are Scottish, and I just walk out in 3 coats, going, it's really cold today. So what's wrong?
They're in shorts and
it's the summer. It's not raining.
kilts.
What's the problem? You can
Especially people like Nav.
Oh yeah, that guy. I don't know.
But like same as you say though, no matter where you are, no matter the location, a good race director will always find the right terrain anyway if they're willing to go out and look for it. Like I think it was it Ripon, Ripon, Yorkshire, the tank training ground.
Yeah.
And went to look at that, you wouldn't have expected there to be a lot of elevation or whatever, but they basically just used the side of a hill, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, sending you up and down it, just doing switchbacks and things like that. Make up for not having a mountain there. By the time you've done that, your legs are absolutely on fire anyway, so you don't need it.
Yeah, it's true. What I try to put into a course is to have that element. You can take a reasonably flatter course and get a lot of elevation out of it, but it's trying to make sure you have a purpose for it. Yeah. We've had some venues where you could easily up that elevation. If people want more elevation, you could go just back and forth, up and down a hill for the sake of it. But it's a pretty boring race, and you want people to come back to a race over and over again because they enjoyed it. If you're just sending them to the top of a hill and back because you want to say this is the most elevation you'll get on a race, they're only ever going to really enjoy that once, maybe twice, but they're never really going to want to come back to it. And then you're always going to struggle to convince them that any of the course you do is any different. So it's without being out on the ground, it's difficult to find those points. Wales is a really good example. When you arrive at the Welsh venue, you see this huge mountain. Which tells you there's going to be a lot of elevation, but actually, unless you learn the trails that we've had to find in there, and we were on that venue for 5-6 days, just trying to get all of the all of the little trails. We pulled all of the old Strava data from 2015 just to link up. How do we get you from the top of the mountain to come back to this level, to go back to the other, to do obstacles in all of these places without just going bottom to top to bottom to top to bottom to top, because it's not fun. It's just not fun for anyone. There has to be a purpose to it. And I guess that's where it's just trying to apply some intelligence to the course, and it's not always going to appeal to everyone. It's not going to make everyone happy. Some people want a flat course, so it's trying to give that something for everyone.
I think it's nice to know what sort of, especially for people who take it a little bit more seriously, just to know a personality of a course maybe going into it, because I used to like it when I knew if it were coming up to one that was like flatter and faster. You knew you could run that one a little bit harder and not have to hold anything back. Or if you knew it was the hilly one, or if you knew it was or like Pippinford Park, you never knew what you were going to get. So you knew you had to save everything you possibly could. Take it steady, because you know you're going to get battered to death on that course anyway. Because I honestly believe Pippinford Park is probably, in terms of what it has to offer, is one of my favourite courses from all of the UK anyway. For what you can send people through, it must be crazy to try and do a build there and get the things out to where, I know it's sort of army training ground and stuff like that, but still trying to get obstacles into some of the places that you have to without knowing it off by heart. It must be a nightmare, but I still think it's one of the best places I've ever ran. So in terms of Spartan, obviously, most people know you're starting with the so people's main access event would usually be the sprint, then they move on to the super, and then the beast, which completes what is called a trifecta for people that don't know. But then also you've got stages above that. Now, we've already spoke about Death Race, and we'll speak a little bit about the trail events as well in a second. But also what people may not know is that there's things like hurricane heats and things like that as well, which obviously are going to, your ears are going to prick up at this one, because this is obviously where your passion comes from again, in terms of a personal passion of being able to do something that you enjoy doing, and maybe you're a little bit sadistic and you like to put people through. So in terms of hurricane heat, is that something that is going to continue in the UK, and maybe could you explain to people what they actually are?
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of did the same thing with On Trial for a while, and we had similar with the hurricane heats. There was a period where we generally told people that they were too tough to finish. We used to do the same with the Death Race and I guess the Agoge for a while, and then so we realised that we're telling people. We're not really telling people what the event is, what you're going to do, and that it's too tough to finish, so people just didn't come and do it. And we found ourselves in this difficult situation of now we want people to come and do these events, but we haven't really sold them in the best way. So it's now trying to go back and explain, hey, this is what it is. So the Hurricane Heat, in essence, is predominantly a team-building event. So we have 3 different variations. There's the 4 hour. It's around 4 hours. You can go a little bit over, but typically you're around 4 hours, and that is almost entirely team based. So you will start off, depending on the numbers, it could be just one larger team. We could split you down into smaller teams. And what we try to teach there is a warrior ethos. We say warrior, but it's based on a Spartan warrior. It's not so much a military aspect to it.
Yeah,
it's just trying to bring in the camaraderie of achieving a task together. And it's something that I always enjoyed, is you take a group of people, some may know each other, but they predominantly are strangers. And what you want them to be at the end of it is a family. You want them to be able to work together. So you have 4 hours to take a group of people and put them through a series of tasks to create a team. So it is a fun team building type event. You can expand that to the 12 hour, which for around half of that, maybe 6 maybe 8 hours, is probably team based. So again, we're still building, we're focusing on that team aspect. Weights tend to get heavier, the tasks tend to get tougher, and you tend to see some people quit, as it just pushes them a little bit over the edge of what they're either capable or comfortable with.
Yeah.
And both of those things can change. and you're trying to teach people that not everything is within their capability, their comfort level. It's those events are really good at just stripping people back to the bare elements of themselves and show what they can do. And I find that nowadays people are really scared to acknowledge what they're capable of and what they're comfortable doing. But we want to assume that we can do everything and we're fine with everything, but the reality is we're not. So those events are really good for putting people together as a group, finding the flaws, and rather than saying, hey, this is a flaw, you suck at this, is say, hey, this is something you're not very good at. This is not your strength. This is something that you need to get better at. Here's how we're going to do it. So we then try and open and identify some of those areas. We'll show people their strengths, their weaknesses, and in the team where someone's maybe weaker at something, someone in that team is going to be stronger at something, so they can work together. That team element then starts to come into its own, so people can learn off of each other. So you end that event with a much stronger, rounded team and group of people who are more aware of themselves.
Yeah.
There is an individual element within the 12-hour where we will pit you against each other, so that it becomes almost a competition, a competitive aspect. As much as you have to operate as a team, and life works so much better when we are working together as one, there are times where you have to be able to push yourself against yourself to be the first one through. So they tend to take the form of pretty rudimentary time trials. It could be the fastest mile, or here's a sandbag, we'll do the fastest carry or the drag or something along that type. They're not necessarily as a guide for how fast are you. Sometimes what we plan into the event, after that point, the event tends to get exponentially more difficult. So what that allows us to do, that individual element allows us to do, is just identify the people that, hey, you're at or past your comfort point.
Yeah.
What happens next, you're probably not going to do. And we get a lot of strange looks from people of saying, hey, you're not going to be able to do this. But at the same time, we've done so many of these events, you start to learn to recognize what people can and can't do. But what we want to be able to do is not say, you can't do this, go away. It's you can't do this right now. This isn't within your skill set or your capability set right now. Yeah. So, hey, you've reached this point. This is awesome, fantastic. We've absolutely loved having you with us, but the event's going to continue and you're probably not going to be a part of it. You couldn't meet this time hack. So go away.
So it's totally different to a lot of other events, and where it's like they're trying to make people quit, where this it's not like that, is it, at all?
Yeah, not particularly, no. And there was a point where it was that. There was a point where that's what it was. But we have the death race for that. There were points within, I guess, the endurance life where that was the top and bottom of it. We wanted you to sign up to start, and we wanted to have as few people finish as possible. But it's not really productive to anything. And this is partly the way that I see it. Different cryptea, different people within the Spartan endurance community have their own different take on it. But this is particularly the way that I look at it and what I try to bring to it. I want people to, when they've finished and gone away, I want them to come back and be able to exceed that point. I don't want to just show that, hey, you've reached your limit, go away. You've reached your limit, hey, let's work out how to get you past that so you can come back stronger next time. And then that progresses to the H3X, which is a one time a year. So we host the event once a year. We have around 6 countries a year that take part in it. The UK was part of it last year. And we have an entire storyline that has all 6 countries competing against each other. So they all start at the same time. The leader of endurance is American. So they typically, we start at whatever time zone they're in, which... meant that I think in the UK last year we started at 1 a.m, which was really weird. It's a really weird time to start an event. It works really well, but it is a really weird time to start and finish an event 24 hours later. But we take you through the whole evolution of the Spartan endurance life there. So that we have the first 4 hours are based around the team building element of the 4 hour. We then progress on, so it gets a little tougher as we break in. So up until the 12-hour, the first half of it, that is based on the 12-hour hurricane heat. So it gets tougher from around 4 to 8 hours. then there's some individual elements, and then it just becomes a tough team building task. I remember last year when we did it, we blindfolded. We played a game blind leading the blind. We blindfolded the teams, and we kept one person. We gave them sight, so they didn't have a blindfold, but they had to guide everyone through rolling mud at Marston Lodge last year. For anyone that raced it and can remember that was not the most pleasant, or it was amazing, whichever way you want to look at it. It was a pretty tough rolling mud to get through, and we did it in the middle of the night. So they didn't have head torches, apart from the one guy at the front, so he could just see where he was going. But he had to guide every single person through there for the rest of it. It was probably one of the most fun things that I've been able to witness, just trying to see people work out how to do it. But it's what I love about those events. You get to sit back and you could just see how do people figure out a solution to this. They have two options. They do it or they don't.
Yeah.
So, and then from the 12-hour onwards to the full 24, it gets a little tougher. There's some more individual elements, but the whole H3X is against other countries. So that there's tasks built into that timeline. Every country completes a task. They get a certain amount of points, and at the end of it, whoever has the most points is the winning country. The UK did not win last time, but I think if I remember right, that went to Austria. Although don't quote me so much on that. It's I don't have it in front of me. We may or may not be in it this year. We're just taking a look at that, but it is good fun. And then you can progress from that up to the Agoge and then onto the Death Race, which just become entire other animals themselves.
Yeah. So the hurricane heats, especially the short ones, they're usually part of a race weekend for you. They're added on. Correct. Is that correct? So like on a Friday night or whatever. So in terms of endurance for you, and then still having to put on a full event of races as well, how do you deal with that? How on earth do you overcome that obstacle?
We have fantastic coffee on site.
Okay. Basically.
Pretty much. Look, we've got a really good team around Spartan, so there'll come a point where we have to have other endurance. The people lead endurance, but for as long as I can get away with it, it is an absolute passion of mine that I enjoy doing. So I'll continue to do it. But yeah, the Marston Lodge weekend for me generally is we're now doing the 12-hour on a Friday. It makes it way easier to just get that chunk out of the way first. So we'll do the 12-hour starting Friday evening. That'll end just before the race day on a Saturday. So I'll go straight from Friday evening into the race day. So I'll have around 30 to 45 minutes, which is about long enough for a good 20-minute nap, before getting down to the start line to brief the elites, which is, there's going to be some of the elites listening to this thinking, so that's why it doesn't make any sense on that race day. That's why we can't understand what he's saying. And then same with the volunteer brief, that they are so jumbled at times on this day. And then we'll do the entire race day. There's usually a point towards that where I can grab a couple of hours sleep, but the last one not so much. And then we'll do the entire race day, which will be from around morning time. So typically a race day we'll be on site getting ready from around 4:30. Then we'll end at around 7-8 o'clock at night. So we'll go into the teardown process as part of that course. So we'll be, even without the endurance, the guys will be on site until around 8 o'clock. But I'll still be going straight through with a couple of the team. Then we'll have already started the 4-hour at this point, which will end around 10, 11 o'clock that night. And then we'll get back to the hotel around midnight on Saturday. And then we're back on site for around 4:30 on Sunday morning. So it becomes its own endurance event in itself.
So you've created your own death race around your own job, basically, haven't you?
Yeah, but I guess the reality is I know it's coming, so I can prepare for it. It's that there was a point where I've definitely been guilty of sort of grumbling about it a little bit myself, and then I've stood back and realised actually I don't really have a right to grumble about it. These guys have come here to do this event. They've put themselves into this not knowing what's going to happen. And some of our racers will do very similar. They'll do the 12-hour, they'll go into the super, they'll go to the 4-hour, and then they'll go into the sprint. And we've had a couple, I felt pretty rough on a race day weekend, looked at them thinking, I knew this was going to happen, and they didn't. I have no rights to complain about this right now.
But with everything that's going on at the moment, I mean, so it was last year and years before that, the races are nicely spread out throughout the year. So, like you say, you can prepare for it. Whereas this year, they're going to be squashed a little bit closer together, aren't they? So you're going to be very used to it.
Yeah, very much so. It's from the moment we hit the road at Marston, it's pretty much living out the car and on the road until the end of the year. But you know, it's no one could have really predicted that this is the way it was going to be. So it's the whole team will be together to just deliver the best events that we can. To be honest, it'll be lack of sleep, and we'll pick that up at Christmas time. It'll be a quiet Christmas.
But how long have you been with Spartan now? About 8 years or so, in and around.
Yeah, 7 years. I think it is. 7 years ish.
So you'll have seen changes as different things have come in and out. And is there anything that you miss that Spartan have maybe had to move away from or evolve away from that you feel like you wish that was still there?
Oh, there's probably a list of them. But you know, it's we have to change with the times and for the greater aim of our product of what we want to do. But yeah, I was resistant to course maps for a while. It's when I joined Spartan, you didn't know what was coming. Just the sheer idea of a course map, I hated it. It made me want to vomit. And I definitely got into trouble for a while for not putting those course maps out. I've definitely been guilty a couple of times of, if you go back sort of 3-4 years of maybe not quite sending the course map over in time for it to be produced. Unfortunately, I'm now the one that creates the course maps that go out online, so I can't really get away with that. And I now get why they have to. So that was always one that I'd love a day where we don't. I'd love an event where we don't, just so you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Filling up your own buckets would probably be hands down the absolute biggest one. Filling up your own buckets. There was just something about just watching people have to scrape all of that gravel into their bucket. And this is going to sound really sadistic, but the look on their face when they came back, put a bucket in front of you, and you went, "You've lost them. Go again. You need to empty that out, fill it up, get back out there." I did a race in Texas in 2015, and I sent someone 7 times. 7 times. There was off the 3rd time, I was ready for him. If he turned around and said, "No, I'm not doing it again," cool. I'm not even going to argue. You've already done 3. But it just became, hey, you've lost gravel again, dude. You need to go back out there. And he would.
Some people love it, though, don't they?
The look on his face didn't look like he loved it. But I think that would be my biggest. It'd be really nice to do like a retro race where we, like Spartan Retro, where we go back to the old days.
That would be quite cool, actually, especially if you could bring back gladiators. I know they're an insurance nightmare.
No, I don't miss gladiators.
Do you not miss them?
No,
I loved it.
No. It's my only real memory of them was getting to the end of Brands Hatch so many years ago on the Beast, and I'd carried a rucksack of bricks the entire way. I rucked that entire trifecta, so I carried a 45-pound, 50-pound rucksack with me through each distance, and I'd got to the end as I was coming up to the end, and the guy saw me, and he just dropped that stick. So rather than it hitting me in the chest, he just tripped me up, and I went flying over, and I just slammed straight into my back onto these bricks. It was not pleasant.
And it was probably Dean as well, weren't it?
Yeah, he's probably out there going, "Oh yeah, I remember that guy."
I remember
that guy.
Dean got me pretty bad actually on that finish line that year. That were a good course though. I quite enjoyed that one. To say it was a bit. Not your ordinary Spartan course.
Yeah, it was different.
Running around a racetrack, but it still worked, especially with all the brambles that we had to fight our way through as well.
Oh, I was sliced to pieces when I got to the end of that race.
It was definitely a sadistic course.
Yeah.
So in terms of, obviously, now we jumping along and how things are actually starting to evolve within the industry itself, I suppose a big question, and this depends how much you want to appease Joe or not. Do you see OCR ever getting to the stage where it is actually an Olympic sport? 'Cause we know that that's one of Joe's real passions. But for you, do you see it going that way, or is it something that you don't really think about? Or
It's not front and center for me. We've got events that have to focus on delivering to the mass people that we have coming in, but the whole point of us aligning everything that we do globally is on that basis. If you'd asked me this question 5 years ago, my answer would probably have been, "No, it's just not going to happen. I don't see how it could happen." But as I sit now, I just think it's time. We've done a lot of work with various committees around the Olympics. We've got various people within the business who have experience of working with the Olympics. And the sport has changed significantly to align with that. We have had test events in the US that we've had sections of the course with members of the Olympic Committee there to oversee, well, how does it look? And we've had feedback from them. So, 5 years ago, I remember sitting with Joe and him telling me, and in my head I'm thinking, that's crazy. It's just not going to happen. I mean, cool, you have that aim. That's amazing, but it's not going to happen. And I just didn't see how it was happening because there was nothing happening with it. There was no progress. But nowadays, there's I think it's what that timeline looks like. I think changes. It is still quite a fluid timeline. But I do think it's just time. I don't think it's a matter of time until we get there. And I think it'll be a really big thing for the sport. But our difficulty is trying to keep a Olympic level sport that's also open to so many people. And there's only a handful of sports that have ever really been able to do that.
Yeah. You
Well,
kind
it's
of
standardisation, isn't it?
Triathlon, I guess, is probably our closest model that we could sort of follow in terms of what their industry have done. And to be fair, we've followed a very, and I say this a lot, we've followed a similar timeline to what triathlon did. They had their own bang and bust where there were a massive amount of events, and then all of a sudden it came down to a few that really sort of led the market. And then from there, obviously now we're getting more and more federations and associations popping up, and it's meant that there are certain different pieces that at least it means now that events are going to be on a similar sort of level in terms of safety and what have you, and what sort of things hopefully that they're going to start actually abiding to in terms of it's even that's a long way off at the moment, but at least it means that there is something there, some sort of structure that's getting put into place. Yeah, so in terms of the industry and stuff, it would be cool to see it at Olympics. You only have to look at is it when the army and the fire brigade and everything, when they do that, I don't know what it's called, I suppose like a modern pentathlon sort of thing where they do...
To the cannon, where they have to carry it all the way across from one side to the other.
No, not that one. So where they have to dive under barbed wire, but it's through sand, and then they'll have different hurdles to go over, and they have to do them in a certain way, touching the floor in between each one. People will have seen it on social media where it's been shared about, and it is like fire service.
Is it the International Military Games?
Something like that. And they've got like ladders to climb up, and it's just absolutely crackers. If they make one single false footstep sort of thing, then that's it. They're miles behind the other competitor because they're so fast.
Yeah.
And I could see it being a hybrid version of that maybe. I just don't know how. The trouble with it is, obviously, obstacle racing has got its roots in mud and that sort of running, and it makes it difficult because then it doesn't make it an even playing field when you start looking at bigger numbers, which is what we have to look at because they're never running. A lot of people aren't running the same course. So someone who runs sort of 9 o'clock is running a totally different course to someone's running at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's what makes it a bit difficult at the moment for the competitive aspect and what have you.
Has to start with the standardisation there, like you say. So that's where Spartan have sort of positioned it like that. I'm just wondering, if it did get to an Olympic standard where you've got sort of the marshals on the obstacles, will they be giving out jelly babies?
And they're mandatory everywhere, right? They're part of the sport. So if it becomes Olympic sport, they're just Olympic jelly babies.
And a beer on the finish line as well, and a medal.
Plus the Olympic Committee have got a new sponsor there as well, haven't they? So
I think the challenge the challenge from the way I see it is you could make OCR an Olympic sport really easily. It's a set of obstacles that you need. That obstacle that is a pass or a fail, right? Let's face it, burpees are probably never going to be a part of the Olympic version. It's never going to be a Spartan race at the Olympics. It's going to be what we're working towards is that it's OCR and it's taken from inspiration from what we do. But if you put some of the high failure obstacles there, it takes time to work out how do we assess a racer going through this at the same time.
Yeah.
If you'd have put something like a 6-foot wall there, that becomes a racer's technique of how or strength of how do they get over it. So you could take those really easy obstacles and put them in there and have obstacle racing there, but it's not really what we want to get there. It's how do we have the aspect of OCR from every element that's being challenged, from your ability to run, your ability to cover the distance, to switch between the obstacles, whether that's a strength obstacle like Herc hoist, or using the technique of rope climb, or the skill of how to throw a spear. How do you go and transition between all of those to get to the end? But at the same time, how do we have that as an Olympic sport, but also still have an event that the majority of people can come and do that is similar? It's never going to be the same, but has enough aspect that people can look at that sport when they watch it at the Olympics and go, hey, I'm doing something that's just like that. And, triathlons are a really good place for us to watch and for us to take inspiration from, because whether it's Ironman or just that type of triathlon, they've done it. You have Olympic level triathlons and you have different triathlons, you have different distances, different abilities open for different abilities, and then you have Ironman that is there as the brand. So it's definitely a good one to follow.
And they don't have standardised terrain either, because you'll be, apart from obviously water's water, but in terms of running and the cycling parts of it, you're doing it on a different course for whichever location you choose to do it, or
same as a marathon.
Anyway.
Like, two marathons are ever the same, are they? So it's same distance, but then they finish off in the Olympic Bowl, and that's how I see OCR would be. You'd have the course would be outside the stadium, then you come in to do the last 400 meters and a few hurdles and bits at the end of it.
Yeah, and I think it's entirely possible. Could you take could you take that hilly, mass terrain, mud, wet outdoor venue with a beast and make it an Olympic level venue? It's probably never going to happen. There's like you say, there's too many variations. The athletes that go 15 minutes behind the ones that someone else are going to have just a different experience, and that becomes one of the other elements. You get to an obstacle like slip wall, the first racer there is going to have a really great experience. It's a dry obstacle to get up. The ones that are behind, all of a sudden there's mud over it. So it's trying to work out those areas to get through, and that's what we've worked with multiple people, including Olympic committees and Olympic related committees and personnel to iron out. I think it's just a matter of time. It'll get there. And I think it'd be a good thing for the sport when it does.
Yeah. So in terms of your day-to-day job, what would you say is probably the highlight of your job? If there is one there that sticks out.
There's a huge amount of admin involved, but
that's the highlight of your job is
no, that's not the highlight. Like there's a lot of admin involved there that you don't always see, and you don't always sort of people don't need to see it, but there's a lot of that needs to be done. But when you to get to that point, you get to be outside of venues, and there's some venues that I've been a part of and been on site to places that just you never get to be. You can go take Twickenham, you can go do stadium tours at Twickenham, but it's not very often that you're going to get the keys to the stadium to walk around at leisure for a couple of days. And as long as you don't touch the pitch, which is pretty standard everywhere, then you can walk around and let yourself in and out of every single space. Which is definitely a perk. 100%. I've been in many stadiums over the last few years, including I was born and raised a Man United fan, so walking into Old Trafford was always up there. But I think Twickenham, walking through the players' dressing room and out onto the pitch at Twickenham, definitely on a race day morning with racers stood in that tunnel waiting to go, it is a feeling that will never ever leave me. So being out on venues is definitely this huge perk to the job that you kind of forget. You don't get to do it all the time. You'll go do a venue visit 2 or 3 times. Like we go to Pippenford 2 or 3 times a year before the race to plan the course, see it, make sure everything's good. There's a huge amount of admin. There'll be like 3-4 months admin time, and then you'll get back on the venue and remember, hey, this is what it's all for.
What it is you love about it. So I take it the admin is the downside to the job then.
It's the downside to every job, right? It's having to actually sit and write all that paperwork. But yeah,
we'll gloss over that one quickly then. In terms of for you personally, you've been able to visit loads of different locations all over the world and what have you, and I'd look on very jealously as you get to do all these. Although obviously you're working really hard while you're over there,
100%.
You get to visit these amazing locations. So if you had a choice of putting together your own worldwide trifecta, where the places that you would want to put your trifecta together, where on earth would you put your sprint, your super, and your beast? So they don't obviously they can be wherever you want, but where would your top picks be?
I mean, we already do it, right? It's in Hawaii. Who doesn't want to race in Hawaii?
What you do the whole lot?
It's so it's probably an inside team joke, but we have there's a list somewhere of the people putting their name down to go do the Hawaii, be on the team for Hawaii. The waiting list is, I think, around 5 years long.
Oh gosh.
Everyone wants to go and do that race, and you always get jumped by someone going, hey, I'll work it for free, just because they get to go out to Hawaii. But it's Iceland. There'd have to be one in Iceland. I think an ultra in Iceland was just absolutely epic. I was out there for the first year. I didn't make the second year, but I was out there for the first year, and it's just that the memories attached to that place, including how incredible just that country is, would definitely be up there. So Iceland for sure. We did a beast in South Africa, which was probably one of my favorite beasts. It was the terrain was just relentless. Just the heat, the terrain. So let's go for a super in Iceland and a beast in South Africa. And then the sprint. The sprint would always have to be within the UK. I'd say Wales always had a place, but I think it'd have to be back to our home and it'd have to be at Marston.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that venue. From the moment I first saw it to that's the home of Spartan UK. We get to spend a lot of time there, and I'm getting very privileged to call that the office for a lot of my year.
So that's for you then. That's the one that holds the biggest place in your 100%. Heart in terms of locations. Then
100%. Yeah.
So that's one that everyone should really go and be taking part in. It's your busiest. Is it one of the busiest weekends anyway?
It is, yeah. It is. It's. I think there could be a couple of things. One, it's easy to get to. It's a pretty central location, so it's pretty easy to get to. It is a beautiful venue. It does change every year as well. The venue do a lot of work year to year, so there's typically whilst you'll run some similar sections, you're never going to get the same course there every year. Yeah. They do change a lot for us. You will always get just the most epic rolling mud that will never be at any other venue. And there was a post on Facebook a while back, and it seems a lot of people have got a lot of personal connection to that venue of things that either happened there for them in their life or happened around their life that led them to that venue. So there's, I can't remember what the post was about, but I remember reading it and seeing a lot of people have a very, very big personal connection there.
Yeah. So, and that's nice to hear that, actually, to be able to hear your personal views on locations and things, because obviously everyone, like you say, has different connections to different areas. Like for me, it will always be the one that's my favourite in the UK is Pippenford Park, just purely because for similar sort of reasons as you've just sort of explained with Marston, that
it's where we bonded in that tent together.
Well, it never feels the same though. It never feels the same there. Obviously, we launched the magazine there as well. That were our first ever event to go.
Got the van stuck there
with the magazine. Yeah, you did.
It's where you taught me to climb a rope.
Yeah.
It sounds like you two had a really good date there.
These are all different times, though. These are.
Well, that were the ridiculous rope there as well. The rope that the first proper rope climb that we ever had in the UK that Richard decided to put together that was probably higher than any rope climb will ever be again, and everyone was scared to death of falling from top and dying. But yeah, it's an amazing location. So in terms of locations and getting the most from them and things, obviously now Spartan have announced the trail series, which adds another string to the bow. And a new set of challenges for you and the team to be able to put a trail course together. Can you sort of explain to people what's going to set the Spartan Trail series apart from maybe other trail series, or just taking part in the general OCRs themselves? What's going to be different about them?
You get the trail race experience with a touch of Spartan in there. So they run at the same time as our key event.
Yep.
But it is an entirely separate course. But you'll get all of that experience of being part of the Spartan family. The courses that we design and have designed in there have still got a very Spartan-esque element to them. So they are not your average simple trail run.
Not groomed trails then.
There's going to be variation on terrain. We're using hard packed trails where we have to. The key brief that I gave to myself and a couple of the teams we went out to create the courses for them were, we can't put something in that forces a racer to stop. So it's if we're going to go through something through a stream, that's cool. If you could just run straight through there, not a problem. If you're going to go through this slippy, windy track, as long as a runner can run that, not a problem. What we can't do is pick an obstacle that a runner has to stop to get past, because at that point it's no longer a trail race. But it means that we looked at it, and that had to change part of our approach and part of our attitude to how we plan a course, because they're the things that we'd normally look at and go, we can use that, not a problem. But it means that you still get the toughness of a Spartan course. You still get the challenge of a Spartan course. You don't know where it's going to take you. There'll be a lot of variation. There'll be a lot of elevation, and you'll go through a lot out on course. But you will be able to run start to finish. You will be able to run it as a normal trail race, but you'll have all the added elements of having to overcome some difficulties out there, having to adjust your running style, your approach to it, for the terrain, for the variation, for the elevation you're going to have to go up there, as opposed to just hitting on and it's nothing against those races. I've done a fair few of them there, and they're good fun, but we're not just going to put you on a trail, on a track that you can clearly see and run 8 people wide and take that start to finish.
Yeah. So that's because that's really good, actually. That's cleared it up for me, because I wasn't sure how it'd be run, whether you'd be skirting people around obstacles and it'd be exactly the same course, or how it'd work. So in terms of, is it a totally separate start and finish line as well, or?
No, you share the start and finish. There is an option. Trail runners will be able to go over the fire jump if they wished.
Okay.
So we'll bring runners on. Your base is you go from the start line, you share the same start. You'll get the Spartan Phil, although a slightly toned down version of the Spartan Phil start, because you're not doing the obstacles.
Yeah.
But you'll still get that same Spartan start that everyone else gets. You'll share probably the first around 300 meters of that course that the normal OCR would take, and then that's it. You're off onto your own course. There are sections of that may be similar to the course that's been used the day before, but on a whole, the first 300 meters, 300 or 400 meters of the start line are the same course, and probably the last 200 meters are the same course. Everything else in between, they're 2 separate courses.
Wow.
So you're not just running alongside obstacles. There are some convergence points. There are some points where you will cross under obstacles. So we've used some of that points to bring the courses together, so the OCR can see the trail and the trail can see the OCR, but you're not just skirting around an obstacle to get past it. You're not just running alongside. There's a few points where we brought the course together so the two can see each other, and then they've taken them off. But it is, I'd say, around 85 to 90% an entirely separate course.
Wow. Perfect.
Well, it opens it up for the full weekend, doesn't it, to people? So
yeah,
if they're doing the sprint and the super and they think, well, the trail's just running it again without obstacles, that obviously opens up to have a totally different event.
Yeah, it is, and there's no one's really gonna. It takes me back to sort of what I said about the endurance. If that you can sell that really quickly and really easily, but you're not going to get people's interest. If that endurance was just a smash you till you quit, people will do it, but only for so long. If trail is you're running the course but without obstacles, people will do it. It's different medal, different t-shirt. That's cool, but you're never really going to want to come and do it again. So it's how do we create a challenge that people will want to come back and do. And also, there are people that the whole point of trail is there's a whole set of runners out there that want to be part of Spartan. They want the mentality, the approach to life that Spartan takes, but they don't want to do the obstacles. And as much as that's our bread and butter, that's what we're built on. We have to acknowledge that there are we want those people to come and be part of the family with us. We want them within the Spartan family, so we have to make sure we've got something to offer them. Yeah. And that's where trail sits. But yeah, if you take Marston or Wales, if you're coming to do the full thing, that trail course is an entirely separate course.
Wicked. That's cool, actually. So for this episode, we thought we'd try and bring in the listeners a little bit more, so they can get involved. And so far, we've never actually released who we were going to interview on each episode. We've kept it as a complete surprise. But with this one, we've done it a little bit differently for you. So we sort of opened it up for questions. Now,
okay. This is only because you're a big star in the OCR world, you see, so that's why we released it early.
Well, people don't usually get access to
you.
Carl.
Don't be modest.
Definitely just poured another drink.
So we opened it up, and what it made us, it were a bit of a learning curve for us, because what it made us realise is people in the UK automatically assume someone who has got the title of, although your title is, so what's your exact title again? It is Director of Race Operations. But basically people just automatically assume that's race director. Now, in terms of the UK, because of the way the market, the way it is, and there's so many people who need to be a jack of all trades to be able to put events on, they just assume that means you are doing the whole lot. So some of the questions they've come up with are like to do with like timings, to do with registration, to do with all different bits and pieces. So we've kind of had to blank a few of them off and bat a few away because they just kind of aren't really applicable to this one. But there were a few. One of them was in terms of the Spartan UK and how they sort of have to come in line with the sort of global brand standards and what have you. Is there any wiggle room for each one of the different regions to be able to put like their own variations on obstacles? Do you ever get that freedom to be able to do that, or are you sort of working to a strict set of guidelines on how something has to be put together?
I'd say it's around 90% set.
Yeah.
We do have some lines that we can make variations to some obstacles. It might sound pretty small, but if you take balance walls that we have, which is came about because we used to use balance beams, which were essentially just bits of timber laid down on the ground, and I always hated that it was just such a basic looking obstacle.
Yeah.
It's a non-standard obstacle, and we ran it for a while. There was a point where it was set as it's no longer an obstacle that we're allowed to run, and we went through a process to keep it. So that's now also, because we kept it, we've been able to track data of how it works through races, and actually it's now a standard obstacle around the world. So there is some leeway to a point, but we do have a vetting process in place to go through to get obstacles in, and it's there predominantly to protect racers. We operate in so many countries that it's so easy for whether it be a race director or a build member in a country to think, hey, I've got an idea. I'm going to build a new obstacle. I'm going to put it in, and actually, it's not really safe for racers. So we've seen it, and part of the process that we have is to make sure that every obstacle in every country is the same, because it means that it's the same it's the same standard for a racer to undertake to do it. So a racer is going to get the same experience, but it's safe for every racer. Whilst it may take away some of the unique aspects that we used to have, it's focused around what a racer experience is. So we get a little bit of leeway, but generally it's it stick to the global standard, and deliver consistency, deliver a consistent event that gets incrementally better year on year.
Yeah. I think another one was to do with bucket carries. Now, this is obviously one that you quite enjoy. They're saying, please, can we keep the heavy bucket carries and not go for the light ones that the US have now got?
So let me clear something up here. I've raced across both. The buckets are a little bit smaller. They have got a little bit lighter. The buckets that you had at Windsor are the buckets that will the weight that they will be. We had to lighten them for a couple of reasons. When the ones in the US have a slightly different weight, although it isn't that much different to ours. It's really not. I've raced both countries. I've worked both countries. I know they're not that different. You're only talking a couple of kilos. Ours had to lighten a little bit for the same reason that I put them towards festival. We had a string of issues of people getting out on course. We'd have these epic 800-meter bucket carries in the middle of forest, took you through some beautiful places. And then we had to spend 2 days clearing it up and buy around $2,000 worth of buckets every race because people would just walk out, drop them, and then we're done. Yeah, it's a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
But so we initially moved that obstacle towards the festival and shortened it a little bit so that, okay, now people can, now it's a visible obstacle. It's slightly shorter, but we still had a lot of breakages. And anytime we make an amendment to anything, we'll always try and use the data. What are customers telling us? What is the data telling us? So we reduced our bucket carry, the weight, by around 3.5 kilos. And we ended a race after that with less than 10 broken buckets for the same distance that we've been using. Yeah. So, okay, that could be a one-off. We did the same again for another 2 races. So we now have 3 races. We'd lost less buckets over those 3 races than we'd lost in one race that before it. So it's when we can not have to spend that much money buying buckets, that becomes money that we can spend on other things within the event, improving obstacles and in various other places. So they become a very real aspect as to why we had to. I'm always a fan for the heavier the carry, the better. So you're never going to have buckets that you can do with one hand. Although I have seen it. But the guy was freakishly strong. But it'll always stay within parameters. But it's really not that different to the US. It's the US are not as light as people make out they are.
Yeah. Because there's not really a hell of a lot of differences now, is there? Most things have come in line between.
Yeah. There's still a couple of bits left to align, but for the whole, it's one and the same, and so it should be.
Is there anything that you look at that the US have currently got, any of the sort of regions within the US or North America that they've got, and you think, oh, I wish we had that over here, like on a RD's dream list of obstacle? Is there anything that you'd really wish we could get over here?
It's going to make me sound really geeky, but it's not the obstacles that I look at in the US and think, I think that I wish we could have that. It's things that they have in the background that most people don't see, that I start to geek out over trailer setups and the way they have trailers sat and how they store their, you've got 7 boxes of ratchet straps there. It just looks so neat and tidy.
But to be fair, if you're working with someone like Garfield, even if you have nice machinery and things, it puts it in mud anyway, doesn't it? It just gets everything stuck.
If you give him anything, they'll just roll it down a mountain.
Exactly. So it's pointless, isn't it?
It's wasted.
So they might as well send it over here.
100%. It's that we've got we do have another shipment of new obstacles coming in. Some are replacements, some are additions. We've been looking at 8 Panga for a while, but that does make an appearance in the UK this year. There's a couple that we've looked at. I'm in the US every year. Part of that is to do some work over there with some of our international team, and part is I get to use that opportunity to look at what new obstacles have we got. Some of them don't necessarily make sense until I've actually had my hands on them and played around with them. So there's a couple that we may add, again next year. There's a couple that look really cool, but they just don't really fit within where we can build them. That's
Yeah.
part of the other aspect that we have to look at is some of the obstacles. It's, you know, we can buy them, we can get them in, but sometimes it's where do we put it in course? And we always look at obstacles with the throughput. How many races can we get through it without causing a backlog? And there's a couple of obstacles that are on our books that we could have, but actually the only places I could really put them in some of the venues are towards the start, and they don't really fit there. So it's then trying to sort of plan the next couple of years races to be able to allow the space for these obstacles to then come in. So there's a whole decision making process in what do we bring in and what obstacles do we have. But every year, or at least every couple of years, we try to add and make variations to certain things to keep it fresh.
Because people don't realise, in terms of obstacles, that there's real planning goes into where these obstacles go, because you've got to work out, like, and I remember an RD once sort of gave us a general idea of how he worked his out, and this is for a smaller scale event, so this isn't the size of Spartan. And what he used to do is get someone to do the obstacle, work out roughly how many seconds it takes, work out how many lanes that was, but then times that by however many people he had to put over that obstacle that day.
Yeah.
And if that came back with an answer of 1.2 days or whatever, then obviously it's not going to work in a race situation. The sums just don't add up. And it's similar to, like, you've got to do that, but you've got to do that for 25, 30 obstacles or whatever across a course, and work out where the right points are to be able to put where the races are going to be thinned out enough to do certain ones and different bits and pieces. But I suppose you're lucky because you can have, with Spartan and having maybe a little bit bigger budgets, you can have the size of the obstacles, like the width of the obstacles, to sort of play with a little bit. But yeah, it's people don't realise how much planning goes into that side of things as well.
No, and we call it throughput. It is how many races do we get through there, and exactly as you said, it's looking at how long does it take a racer to complete that. So if we take, you know, you'll almost always see 4-foot walls off the start, pretty close to the start line. They're really quick. Races it takes seconds to get over. We can make them super wide, so we can get a lot of races through there at the same time. They work really well to kind of start to break the pack up for us, which then allows us to use some of the other obstacles within there. So we have to use obstacles at times, and it's not just Spartan, it'll be the same in every race. Almost every RD will be doing the same, is what obstacles do you put to start to break the pack out, so you can then get to what we term the fun stuff. No one's come to a race to do 4-foot walls. No one's come to a race to do OUTs. They're fun obstacles to do, but everyone's come to do rope climb, to do herc, to do spear throw, to do slip wall, to attack what is their challenge.
Yeah.
But you couldn't put them right off the start. For exactly the same, it takes a lot longer to get through. I guess the real benefit that we have is, because we know our obstacles, we kind of start to know that data without having to so much. We have to work it out initially, but we know what makes an obstacle slower. We know what makes it quicker. You know, I know that if I put slip wall after rolling mud, it's going to be so much slower to get through. If I put it there after a barbed wire crawl, so we still get a similar effect, it's quicker. So that you learn a lot of that through experience and over time. It's not 100%, but it's everything we can do to try and mitigate cues across our course as much as possible. And you know, it isn't 100%. It does happen at times. We don't always get it right. I've definitely been guilty of putting what I think is enough sandbags or buckets out there, and then forgetting the number that I put out there and going on this epic 1.5 km sandbag carry, and then realising an hour into race day I overdid it a bit there, and I need to work out how to bring this back in on a race day without really impacting a racer. But it's a lot of planning. And it is, you know, it is. I saw it from my first race as a racer to RD. I actually used to think, you just put an obstacle wherever you want. That's it. But it's there's more in it. There's a lot more in it.
Yeah, definitely. And people don't realise, and it is a geeky side to things, but people need to realise there's a hell of a lot more goes into it than just, I wonder where I can get that obstacle, or where can I be bothered to put that one up, and there's obviously a lot more to it. And then obviously your job is overseeing the people who are building them in first place, which is a job in itself, just to get them to put the flasks down and crack on with some work for a bit, especially people like Nav, is going to be obviously a job in itself. So
Yeah, I mean, we can find that guy to base camp. So he's in a trailer. He's everyone thinks he's one of the greatest things the world has ever done, but he's fairly useless. I mean,
usually setting up his merch tent.
Yeah, like a bit of an insider hint. No one really likes Nav. It's like everyone from an outsider thinks that they do, but actually,
I think he likes it that way. He's one of those people who he likes people not to like him, because then he gets a quieter life and he just gets to crack on with what he's doing.
I spent my entire first race with Spartan. I spent trying to run that guy over. No, we love him. We love him
and his kilt.
He's he's been with Spartan as long as I have, so he's a good close friend. But
he's a good worker.
Yeah, he's an all right worker.
Heart and soul in there. So another one was only a quick one. Was I was interested. So someone said they were interested in what drove the decision about having the penalty loop. Now this is something that I'm unsure of, because I didn't really race that much last year. So I'm assuming you must have had a penalty lap instead of burpees at one of the events last year. And so they just wanted to know what drove that decision.
Yeah, there's a few points to it. Look, burpees are never going to leave Spartan. They're always going to be with us. They're our form of penalty. But alongside getting obstacle racing to the Olympics, burpees are probably never going to be used at the Olympics. So we need to have, if you fail an obstacle, there needs to be another option that we can enforce. So penalty loops become an easier option to enforce than burpees. We have to review footage. The decision of what is a good or a bad burpee and how to enforce that, it generally takes us to after that racer has gone through for us to review that. Whereas a penalty loop, it's there and then. So that helped for us to put it in from that aspect, from getting obstacle racing, the Spartan brand of obstacle racing, to the Olympics, to get that side of it. There were definite assists on race day for us when you have 10 to 12 obstacles that you have to review the footage of those. We have a head of officials, her name's Lucy. She's very black and white on the decision. We make our elites in our age group do a burpee within the start corral for a reason, so we can be clear on this is the standard we're looking at, and that's the standard she reviews footage on. And we review every footage. We have a team throughout the day. Our team of referees and our head official, Lucy, reviews all of that footage. When you get some of the bigger races like a Beast, you're having to review 30 or 40 races over 10 to 12 obstacles. It's a lot of footage, and what we found, not just in the UK, but across the US and a few other countries, it was starting to delay our podiums. Yeah. And it was starting to push that back. And it was as simple a thing as, we could take Windsor, Tyro, it's a penalty obstacle that you have to do burpees for, but it's at the absolute furthest end of the course. Just getting from festival where we review the footage to get out there, get the cameras and get back is a 25-minute journey. Yeah, that's a lot of footage that you can review in those 25 minutes. Hey, if that was a penalty loop, it makes it easier. We don't need to worry about the footage there. We can just make sure we've noted who has or hasn't done that penalty loop.
Yeah.
So they become things that ease us going in. There's one thing of delaying. We have had to delay a podium because we've had a query on footage that we need to find a racer and speak to that racer. And it's only right that if we've had an issue with or a potential issue with a racer's burpees, we speak to that racer before we do a podium.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we've always been able to find them, but we have to get that done. But there's a difference to us delaying a podium just because we've decided to put an obstacle at the furthest end of the course, to now we're just slowing everyone's day down because we want to go through that footage. There's multiple sides to it, but for me, where I include them will predominantly be based around what makes it more efficient for me to look at that footage to confirm our podium and actually apply the penalties. And the same as if we have a really high failure rate obstacle. If we have an obstacle that we know, for whatever reason, a lot of racers are going to fail this particular day, and there's not much we can do to sort of reduce that. Actually, just having that penalty loop can just make it a lot easier and remove any question of burpees. So there's multiple reasons in there.
I like that. Thank you very much. That's a good answer, actually. I'm sure that I would appease them, just to know
I
that
hope
why it
so.
was there and it weren't just chucked in because you didn't want to have to do burpees today or whatever. I'm sure that answers the question a lot more. So basically, to sort of finish things up, because we've kept you for a hell of a long time on this interview so far, and I am aware of
It's
this.
good. It's good.
And so, in terms of where Spartan are now, you are obviously everybody is, and I don't really want to use this word, and it's unprecedented times. Like that is the word that is the most used word this week in
Yeah.
any political broadcast that I've ever seen. But it is, and it's shook the mass participation world especially, and the world that we live around to its absolute core. And people have had to chuck their entire calendar out the window and completely rearrange. So obviously your week has probably been a bit of a nightmare week, trying to reorganize venues, rebook venues, make sure that you're free, make sure you can actually do the build schedule in time and other bits and jobs. And obviously Joe, we've said Joe Sennett, obviously the head honcho at Spartan, he's still seems chipper and bright as ever, and not one bit as if he's got a stress in the world, especially seeing as he's just bailed out one of the other's biggest events organisations within OCR, and probably completely flushed out his savings account to pull another race, and obviously at the worst time possible. So it's just a bit of a nightmare time at the moment. But so the way it's looking at the moment, when will Spartan's first UK event be? If everything goes to plan in terms of new arrangements, when's the new start of the season?
Yeah, so it's funny. I've tried to Google other words for unprecedented because I don't think I've ever heard it used as much as it is. But every single thing you read, it's an unprecedented.
It's
something.
Boris's favourite word, so everyone wants in on the action, don't they?
Yeah, there's some pretty good ones, but they're all too similar, so we'll just stick with it. So it's a weird time, right? It's no one could have ever predicted the state we're going to be in right now. And
because it's unprecedented.
We're going to be. Exactly. And no one can really predict where we're going to be in a few months or in 6 months. But we knew that we weren't going to be able to go ahead with our first couple of events. So we sort of read the data and the information that we have from both our medical team and what was going out from various other medical organisations and rearranged our calendars. Now, what took us a little time, we didn't want to just come out and say, hey, we're postponing the event, because everything's uncertain as it is right now. People don't know what's going to happen so much. We didn't want to just add to that of, hey, you can defer or refund your entry, but we're not going to tell you what's going to happen next. So there was a little bit of work that we had to do over last week and this week to get venues realigned for dates, and they've been absolutely fantastic with us. There's definitely been I think I've flopped back and forth with our Wales venue so many times of, hey, this date good, how about this date? Now we're going to go back to this date. Now this date's fine. Just to try and align, trying to move 3 venues was not, and get them all within a calendar that everything can happen was not easy. But we wanted to make sure that we came out with, look, we all know the place the country's in right now. We all know the what's happening right now. So these events aren't happening, but this is when they are going to happen. So our season will open on the 11th and 12th of July at Marston Lodge.
Yeah.
And then Pippinford has been moved to the 15th and 16th of August. And I'm just hoping I don't get these dates wrong, so no one sits and goes, well, hold on a minute. I don't want to throw anyone out. Ireland has moved to the 7th of November, which, 100% aware that it's the same time as the Trifecta weekend, the Trifecta Championship. Would we have chosen to put a race on at that point? No, we wouldn't have. Was that the weekend that we could get Ireland in? Yes, it was. So for anyone that's listening and thinking, well, why did we put that in? sometimes you don't pick the hand that you're given, and we had to play that hand. So Ireland is the 7th of November, and then Wales moves to the fantastic weather period of the 21st and 22nd of November. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be absolutely beautiful there. I'm so looking forward to it. It's tough, right? It's we're pretty confident with them. Everything's in business as usual for us at the minute. Of just cracking on. We're in the process of those dates are confirmed, so we're now in the process of rebooking everything that we have in for that, and realigning all of our infrastructure and realigning everything we hire in. I'm just going through all the dates. I'd say 80% of our production team are good for it. We're just trying to iron out the few guys who can't make the few of the team that can't make certain dates here or there. But from our perspective, we're carrying on with Marston's our opener. That's the date we're going for, and it just means that's another 3 months that everyone's got to get better at running, get better at obstacles. Look at the positive. It's you've got more time to train. Yeah, there's absolutely no point in us all getting bogged down in, we've had to change certain things. Everyone's had to change everything right now. Everyone has had to change the way they operate, the way they live, every single part of their life at the moment, and no one for the foreseeable. So Joe's sort of chippiness is echoed by the entire Spartan team. It's we can sit and be pretty down about it and think, well, this does suck. Like, it does, but no one chose it. It's the way it is right now. This is life, and it goes back to everything I learned at the Death Race. If we can sit and complain, we can crack on. At the moment, everyone can have access to the Spartan Unbreakable, which is coming out. It's going to be a 30-day workout for everyone. So it's all geared around how they can fuel their body and mind during this time. So you've got 5 30-minute workouts every week, focused around mobility, recovery. It's on the Spartan website. You can pick that up. It's just to help guide everyone through. I mean, look at it another way. How many people complain that they don't have enough time to work out at home or to get out and run? I mean, I know, I'm a really slow runner, but my 5K time has probably come down more in the last week than it has done for months. So
through all those angry runs you've been doing.
No, it's there was definitely a period where it was frustrating of trying to get everything aligned, but it's there's no point in us being frustrated. We're trying to align our entire calendar for all those people who want to come in and still be a part of Spartan. So Joe's exactly the same, and we echo it. It's we can get bogged down in how tough everything is, or we're a Spartan family, we're a Spartan community, and we can come together. We can assist everyone around us. We can be there to help everyone around us. Whether that's our neighbours, the people on the street, the people we see every day but don't really say hi to. Now's the time to say hi to them. Now's the time to sort of wave from a distance. Now's the time to sort of make sure we're thanking those people out there. While we're all stuck in our homes, there are people that are having to get in their cars and go put themselves right in the midst of this virus that no one seems to be able to stop, and are choosing to do that. So it's really not as bad as we think it is.
So it's definitely about directing your energies in the right, filtering them in the right ways rather than putting them into the wrong things.
Yeah, us having to rearrange some races, but still being able to race, us still being able to go about our daily lives, just albeit a little bit amended. It sort of pales in comparison to the people that are. It is nothing compared to the people that are having to go out there and say, hey, there's a virus that the world is being told to stay away from, and we've got to go and put ourselves in front of it.
Stand right next to people who've got it. Yeah, 100%. Exactly. And that's a good point to make, actually, Colin. I think anyone with any common sense sort of echoes that as well, that it is just about how you look at things, isn't it? And what angle you look at them from. It'll make all the difference. So, Carl, Kevin, have you got anything else you'd like to ask Carl? Anything else that's popped into your mind? Are you still there? Are you still awake?
I'm still there. I think everything's been covered, like the questions you've asked there, and like I said, he is a bit
of a mystery man of OCR, isn't he?
So I've got to say, we're just like chuffed to have him on their podcast, really, because we know he's a busy man.
It's been a pleasure, and I try and keep myself to myself for a lot. It's I'm not really one of these put myself out and say, I'm not the face of Spartan. Everyone
You know, Carl
races, it
Wibberley.
is.
That's what you're trying to say. You don't strive for the attention.
No, I don't need to walk around on a race day. I've been at Mudsef and I've seen it, introducing myself to everyone. No, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed it. It's not very often that I actually get to sit and answer the questions from racers and from you guys, and actually get to speak out to the community. So I've enjoyed it. I've very much enjoyed it. Thank you.
Perfect. I'm glad we could give you that platform for a change, and that you've actually enjoyed doing it, because
Yeah,
I know
100%.
people will definitely get something from this, to be able to, even just to be able to relate to the job that you do and who you are, and that there is a face there putting these obstacles together. It's not just like a machine that goes around and puts everything together. there is a real team there, sort of hammering away in all weathers, to be able to put these courses together that we know and love.
And I say at every race, particularly to our volunteers, I always thank those, and there's always a shout out to those guys. I started as a volunteer. I know what it's like to sort of look out the window on a miserable morning at sort of 5:30 a.m. and think, well, I don't need to be there, but still make it there. So we couldn't, our events couldn't happen without them. So there's always going to be a shout out to them. But I always say the same to them, and I'll say the same to every racer. It's the job that we do is entirely for them. We don't get to do it if no one comes to the race.
Yeah.
So whether it's through this, whether it's on a race day, I don't put myself out there to be in any sort of public light. But if anyone wants to grab me and have a chat on a race day, I'll always try and make as much time as I can.
Unless you're just in a 12-hour hurricane heat, and you've got
I'll still do it, but it's
might not be the same call as we're hearing now.
Probably not going to be as coherent. I'm probably going to say a few things. You're going to think, wait, what? What am I going to say? Does that
Is he drunk
does
or
that
tired?
even make sense? But it's I couldn't do this job without those racers, and those events couldn't happen without multiple people coming together. So I'll always try and make as much time as I can to speak to anyone that wants to talk Spartan whenever. You got a question?
I've got one last one, for
go.
previous guests. We've allowed them 30 seconds to do a big sell. So we're going to give you 30 seconds to do the big sell on Spartan, but you get 30 seconds and 30 seconds only, so see what you can cram
is
in.
that it?
So Carl will give you a little countdown.
I'm looking at the clock. I'm going to get 2,
You ready,
1.
Carl? Go.
Yeah, so, you can pick any OCR, and there's many OCRs that you should do within the country and around the world, and I'd absolutely advise everyone to go do all of them. Spartan is that different element of bringing competition in that happens on a global scale. So if you come into the Spartan family, you're not just doing a race, you're becoming part of something much bigger than you. I'm counting 3, 2, 1, but be part of the family.
You never get a faster 30 seconds, do you? It flies by.
I love it.
It's quick.
But no, honestly, Carl, thank you very much for this, because although I've known you for a long time, even because, like you say, you're not someone who puts yourself out there and wants everyone to know all your business, and you're not like a social media whore or whatever. So it is cool, and I've learned a hell of a lot about you on this throughout this interview. So I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure all our listeners will as well. So yeah, just to close things off, obviously, everyone still needs to be supporting racers. They still need to be signing
100%.
up. Yeah, so definitely get yourself signed up for the next Spartan coming in July. It's got plenty of time to plan it, so you can't ever say that it's not going to be the most perfect race that is ever put on. So we've got that coming up. So yeah, thank you very much for listening to this episode. Oh, don't forget to click that subscribe button on whatever directory you listen to, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, whichever you're on, Spotify. So leave us a review if you've enjoyed it, if your directory allows it, because it helps massively, pushes up the rankings, gets us in front of more people. As soon as we get up there, it makes a hell of a lot of difference to us. Don't forget, also, obviously, in-house, Mud 7, we are in August time, and we need people to still continue signing up, because it's without Mud 7, it's obviously the one that drives our entire everything about us, the magazine and everything. And I know things are really up in the air at the moment, but we still need people to be going and buying tickets to Mud 7. Obviously, it's a unique event. 7 different race organisations, all bringing obstacles, all putting them onto the same course over 7 kilometres. It's a unique event that you're just really not going to be able to experience anywhere else. So you can sign up to that at mud7.com, and that's taking place on the 8th of August, all being well, as long as Boris doesn't decide to lock us down for any longer. And yeah, apart from that, thank you very much for your time. Karl, thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, gents. And thank you everyone for listening. Enjoy.
Yeah, thank you very much. Cheers, Kev.
Cheers, Carls.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.